imagine the world inside the mother's womb, a world in which all of one's needs are met. One is fed without chewing, held without squirming, completely enveloped in the comfort of a continuous environment, as if one could take the most perfect spa wherever one goes, with whatever one wants. Out of that world of sustainable bliss, suddenly, completely without our consent, we are pushed and pulled into a hard-edged world. Suddenly, we're grabbed, we are swaddled, we are exposed to the cold, we cry, we squirm, we fuss, and we stress. It couldn't be more different than the world of the womb. And suddenly, we need to learn how to survive. And so, many of us, in one way or another, harbor in our dreams the fantasy of a return. The idea of entering into a relationship with another that somehow replicates the relationship with the mother. We hold in mind the idea that we walk through the world looking for the missing half of ourselves, looking for that piece which completes a broken whole, looking for the other who will bring us to one. This is a deeply enticing idea, and it is steeped in the narratives of romance, the quest for the perfect complement of oneself, the quest that completes in consummation with the other. And yet, this dream of creating one whole almost willfully overlooks the myriad ways in which we and the other are simply not the same. Physically, we are separate. Temperamentally, we're different. Historically, we've lived entirely other lives. Biologically, we're not the same. And genetically, we couldn't be more varied. This doesn't even take into account our personality and character. And yet, somehow, the discomfort of being alone can force us to deny the ways we are different. Often in relationship, especially with our partners, we have a vested interest in insisting we're the same. And so, when our differences inevitably present, we go out of our way to demand that they vanish. So we say to our partner, "You're simply wrong. It's not hot in here, it's cold. You shouldn't be hungry, you should be full. Can't imagine you're tired. You should have lots of energy." And so, when the other reveals how they're different, we tend to insist that there's something wrong with them. If I'm cold and you're hot, maybe you're sick. If I'm full and you're hungry, you need to see a doctor. If I'm energetic and you're lethargic, you might need to see a therapist. The idea that we might have very separate selves is so intolerable that we insist we're the same. Insist because the idea of being separate entails the recognition that we are alone. And that recognition itself entails the truth that in so many ways we are separate from everyone. In so many ways we of course walk alone until inevitably we enter the grave. And because of our terror of being so isolated, we work with our mind to imagine we're similar, to imagine we're identical, to imagine we are one. The terror of the insight that none of these is true is powerful enough to send us into denial. Because of our terror of acknowledging this truth, we work very hard to insist that we're one And this level of investment invariably leads to a power struggle with the other to demand that they agree. Of course, they on their side, if they are similarly invested, will meet us with at least as much force and demand that we share their point of view. Because neither one of us, in this insistence on oneness, can tolerate the truth that we are in fact two. This state of affairs, in which we pretend we're one, constitutes a state of imaginary merger, the hallmark of which is always a power struggle. I'm right, you're wrong. I'm right, you're wrong. You're sick, I'm well. You're sick, I'm well. And so it goes on and on and on and on. Both partners struggling to assert their domination, not just because they want to feel they're right, but because the idea that the other might be different implies the recognition that the two are really separate, and in their separation have their own lives to live, and more importantly, have their own deaths to experience. The way out of merger is through differentiation, which entails the recognition that in fact we are different. This recognition is demanding and scary because it insists that we own our distinctness, and in owning our distinctness, that we accept that we're separate. If we can rise to the level of acceptance, if we can bear the truth that we walk the world alone, even if we're connected through love and affection, even if we're connected through the web of relationship, nonetheless, we come into the earth in a body, we walk the earth in that body, and at the end, we give it up. If we can find the power in ourselves to accept this simple fact, then we can move from merger to differentiation. Then we can give up the power struggle to be right, which cloaks the deeper struggle to deny that we're different. And so, if we can find that power within, then we can begin to do the work of relationship, rather than insisting on systematic denial that the other is different in so many ways. we embrace that state of difference, become curious about the other, and inquire into their experience of themselves. Similarly, once we acknowledge the difference, we can begin to inquire into our experience of ourselves. And so we can ask them to tell us how it goes for them as they walk through their relationship with us. And we can begin to tell them how it goes as we walk through the relationship with them. Now, instead of engaged in a power struggle for dominance, which cloaks the fear that we are really separate, we begin with the acknowledgement of the difference between us. Find our curiosity for their experience and our own, and work to understand what life is like for them, work to explain what life is like for us, and make possible the beginning of that intricate negotiation which permits two people so different in many ways to attempt to inhabit the same space in time. To live together with another person requires tremendous give and take. To have children, to own property, to care for parents, to manage all of the demands that come with our lives, requires a tremendous capacity to compromise. And so we understand that the work of relationship is to understand the other, to understand ourselves, and to try to accommodate the best that we can the many differences and many preferences that distinguish us from each other. Where the hallmark of merger is inevitably power struggle, the hallmark of differentiation is the capacity to negotiate. Rarely does the negotiation satisfy both people equally. But if the compromise reached works well enough, both people will be satisfied enough to continue if neither achieves everything they desire.